The Wamapoke tribe cursed Pawnee. The paintings hanging in Pawnee City Hall are not decorative choices. They are confessions, depicting the founding of Pawnee in graphic, almost celebratory detail. Settlers massacring the Wamapoke people with casual brutality, framed as civic achievement. The Wamapoke tribe was never wiped out. Their descendants, including tribal elder Ken Hotate, live nearby in a thriving, prosperous community with a successful casino and strong government connections. Meanwhile, Pawnee itself hemorrhages money, collapses infrastructure, and faces budget crises so consistent they stop looking like bad luck and start looking like something deliberately sustained. The theory says the Wamapoke cursed Pawnee at its founding, not metaphorically, structurally. The Harvest Festival, the single event capable of rescuing the Parks Department's budget, nearly collapses at the critical moment Ken Hotate places a curse on it. The moment Leslie appeases the tribe, the lights come back on. The moment cooperation ends, the problems return. Ken plays the long game with the quiet perfection of a man who has been watching the same pattern confirm itself for 2 centuries. His community is prosperous. Pawnee is perpetually failing. The theory says that gap is not accidental. The Wamapoke did not lose the town. They built a casino on top of the ruins and let Pawnee spend 200 years finishing the job for them. Jerry was a government sleeper agent. Jerry Gergich is the Parks Department's universal punching bag, clumsy, forgettable, perpetually humiliated, the man nobody takes seriously enough to examine carefully. And the theory says that's exactly the point. Jerry is fluent in multiple languages. He plays piano at a professional level. He paints with technical skill that would embarrass trained artists. He catches a falling glass with reflexes so precise that Leslie calls him clumsy to cover the moment and moves on immediately. He has a family so absurdly perfect, so uniformly beautiful and accomplished, that they read less like a normal household and more like a carefully constructed cover story. His government position, dismissed by everyone around him as low-level and inconsequential, grants him access to municipal records, city planning documents, budget allocations, and civic infrastructure data spanning decades. The theory says Jerry's incompetence is calibrated, not genuine. A sleeper agent, embedded in a local government, needs a reason to stay indefinitely without attracting scrutiny. Helpless Jerry provides perfect cover. Nobody investigates the man they're busy laughing at. He maintains his position across administrations, survives every budget cut, outlasts every colleague, and eventually becomes the most beloved mayor in Pawnee history, re-elected so consistently that he dies in office at 100. A man whose bumbling cost him every opportunity in life does not end up with that outcome, unless the bumbling was always the strategy. Ron's will contains a real treasure map. Ron Swanson's will, revealed in an early episode, leaves all his possessions to the man or animal capable of killing him, handwritten on a scrap of paper, signed with a flourish of what appear to be decorative symbols arranged above his signature. The show presents the will as a joke, establishing Ron's rugged, self-reliant philosophy. A Redditor named Proofrock451 spent significant time mapping those symbols against geographic and directional markers and arrived at a specific location outside Pawnee. The symbols are not decorative, they are coordinates. They point to a pioneer-era burial site where, the theory concludes, Ron has been quietly depositing gold for the entirety of his adult life. This is not a stretch for Ron Swanson's documented belief system. He explicitly distrusts banks. He explicitly distrusts paper currency. He is shown in one episode accidentally confirming that his gold is buried under a specific tree. The same tree April mentions reminds her of him, before catching himself and changing the subject. A man who distrusts every formal institution for storing wealth, who has decades of savings and no investment portfolio the government could track, would put his money somewhere only he could reach. The will isn't a quirky character joke. It is an inheritance document encoding a real location, left to whoever is capable of earning it, because Ron Swanson would never leave his life's work to anyone who wasn't willing to work for it. Ann Perkins is Karen from The Office. Ann Perkins appears in Pawnee. With no history the show feels compelled to explain. She works as a nurse. She befriends Leslie. She dates a series of men. She eventually moves away with Chris to start a new life. The show treats her backstory as simply existing rather than earned through detail. The crossover theory, built by fans who notice the shared universe connections between Parks and Recreation and The Office, proposes that Ann Perkins is Karen Filippelli from Dunder Mifflin's Scranton branch. Relocated to Pawnee under a new name following the Scranton Strangler trial, Karen served as a witness in that case. A high-profile trial connected to a serial killer would generate genuine safety concerns for witnesses, particularly in a town where the killer was never fully confirmed to be imprisoned. Witness protection would explain Anne's conspicuously absent backstory. It would explain her willingness to anchor herself in an unremarkable Indiana town, despite having no visible ties to it before the show begins. It would explain why nobody in Pawnee ever seems to know anything about her life before she arrived. The theory places two NBC comedies in the same universe, connected by a single woman who changed her name and started over, quietly building a new life in a small town that asked no questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Leslie's flash-forwards were all in her head. The Parks and Recreation series finale delivers a sequence of flash-forwards showing every character's perfect future. Ron gets his dream wilderness job. Tom becomes a best-selling author. April and Andy have children. Leslie rises to the highest levels of government. Every single person lands exactly where they most deserve to be. Their happiest possible outcome arrived at cleanly and without the friction real life imposes. The show creator, Michael Schur, was asked directly about these flash-forwards in a podcast interview and confirmed something the fans had been circling for months. The flash-forwards happen specifically during moments when Leslie touches each character, not as a formal documentary reveal, as a physical connection. The theory, built from Schur's own words, says these futures are not confirmed events. They are Leslie's imagination. Every time she touches someone she loves, she sees the version of their future she has spent years believing they deserve, the outcome she has been working toward on their behalf, even when they didn't know it. April's decision to become a mother in the flash-forward is the most cited evidence. Throughout the entire series, April is explicit and consistent about not wanting children. Andy's enthusiasm for parenthood appears suddenly and without development. The theory says those children are Leslie's hope for April, not April's reality. The show ended not with confirmation, but with the vision of a woman who loved her people enough to imagine their best possible lives, held quietly inside her. The whole time, Ben bankrupted his town for a girl. Ben Wyatt was 18 years old when he was elected mayor of Partridge, Minnesota, the youngest mayor in the state's history. He then immediately commissioned a citywide indoor ice skating complex so ambitious and so financially catastrophic that it consumed the entire municipal budget, bankrupted the town, and earned him the permanent, publicly documented nickname, Ice Clown. The explanation Ben offers across the series for this decision is teenage overconfidence and poor judgment, the kind of spectacular youthful error that defines a person's public legacy before they've had any real experience making decisions. The theory examines one additional piece of evidence the show plants and never returns to directly. Ben has a documented, involuntary physical response to women on ice skates. It appears multiple times across the series, including during an official government hearing when Leslie wears skates, a moment Ben cannot recover from quickly enough to pretend wasn't affecting him. The theory says Ben did not bankrupt Partridge because he had a bad idea about economic development. He bankrupted it because a girl on ice skates told him it was a good idea, or because he wanted to build something that would keep girls on ice skates in his vicinity permanently. A teenage mayor making a multi-million-dollar infrastructure decision based on adolescent infatuation is a more complete explanation for the specific project chosen than anything Ben himself has ever offered. Jerry was the Reasonablists' original leader. The Reasonablists are Pawnee's resident doomsday cult, a group of true believers who gather regularly to await the arrival of Zorp the Surveyor, an ancient lizard god who will melt their faces off during the apocalypse. They have been predicting and subsequently failing to witness this event since the 1970s. They are widely regarded as harmless, slightly eccentric, and entirely ineffective. The theory begins with timing and competence. The Reasonablists formed in the 1970s, a period during which Jerry Gergich would have been in his 20s, young enough to be formative, idealistic enough to be recruited, and socially searching enough to be susceptible to community built around shared belief. Jerry's documented skills, piano, painting, languages, and a charisma powerful enough to sustain a marriage to a woman described as Christy Brinkley for decades and eventually win the mayoralty of Pawnee through popular elections, are not the skills of a man whose greatest life achievement was accidentally faxing the wrong document. The theory says Jerry founded the Reasonablists, led them through their early years, and quietly stepped back when the apocalypse failed to materialize on schedule, pivoting to a government career that provided stability while maintaining proximity to the community he'd built. His eventual status as the most beloved mayor in Pawnee history, with suspiciously high voter turnout from districts connected to reasonableist activity, is the theory's final piece. Jerry didn't win those elections alone. His original congregation turned out to vote. April was never actually apathetic. April Ludgate performs total indifference from the moment she arrives in the Parks Department. She is contemptuous of enthusiasm, allergic to warmth, openly hostile to any suggestion that she cares about outcomes or people. The show codes this as her defining personality trait for 7 seasons, the girl who finds everything exhausting and would rather be elsewhere. The theory tracks what April actually does beneath that performance and finds something entirely different from apathy. She protects Andy with a ferocity that activates instantly when anyone threatens him. She follows Leslie's leadership, even while openly mocking every decision Leslie makes. She builds a successful advocacy career around animal welfare, because their suffering reaches past every defense she has constructed. She cries at Lil Sebastian's memorial. She agrees to have children, despite spending years establishing that she didn't want them. The theory says April's apathy was never a personality. It was a wall built around a person who had already been hurt badly enough that performing indifference felt safer than risking the exposure that genuine caring requires. The evidence for what caused it is deliberately withheld by the show, but the pattern it produces is consistent across 7 seasons, with someone managing a specific early wound. Andy is the answer the theory points toward. April fell for Andy, not despite his emotional transparency, but because of it. He was the first person she encountered who was congenitally incapable of hiding how much he cared. For someone whose wall was built against people who leave without warning, finding someone whose feelings were permanently visible was not just attractive, it was the first safe thing she had ever found. Ron's ex-wives were sent to destroy him. Ron Swanson has been married twice, both times to women named Tammy, both times to women who nearly dismantled him completely, and both women share his own mother's name. Tammy 1 is introduced as Ron's first wife, a figure so psychologically consuming that Ron physically deteriorates in her presence, losing his mustache, his convictions, and his capacity for independent decision-making within hours of contact. Tammy 2 is Ron's second wife, whose appearances across the series each produce a different version of Ron that none of his colleagues recognize. The theory says the 2 Tammys are not romantic coincidences. They are the product of Ron's mother, a woman the show establishes as the single most powerful force in Ron's psychology, deliberately selecting and cultivating relationships designed to keep her son dependent and controllable. Tammy 1, who delivered Ron at birth as a candy striper and later married him, is the theory's strongest evidence. A woman who is present at the beginning of a person's life, disappears, and then reappears as a romantic partner decades later, is not simply a quirky backstory detail. She is a sustained, long-game presence operating in Ron's life across decades, with a consistency that casual romantic history doesn't explain. Ron's mother named both Tammys. The theory says she did not do that accidentally. She built a rotation, ensuring that the women most capable of neutralizing her son were always within reach of his heart. Mark Brendanowicz is dead. Mark Brendanowicz works in the Pawnee City Planning Department during seasons 1 and 2, functioning as Leslie's friend, Anne's ex-boyfriend, and the show's initial grounded male anchor. He announces his engagement, leaves his job, moves out of Pawnee, and the show never mentions him again. Not once. Across 5 more seasons, and a finale that flash-forwards through every named character's future, Mark Brendanowicz does not exist. The theory built around this total erasure does not accept the standard explanation of a character written out when the show's direction changed. It proposes something the show could never explicitly confirm without changing the tone of everything around it. Mark did not simply move away and build a quiet life somewhere. He left Pawnee in the aftermath of the construction pit scandal, carrying the weight of professional compromises and personal failures. The show was only beginning to excavate, and he did not survive what came next. The people who cared about him found the topic too painful to raise directly. The show's refusal to ever mention him again, even in a throwaway line during a reunion or a finale callback, tracks with how communities handle the names of people whose absence has a specific kind of weight. The Parks Department moves forward. They celebrate milestones. They name things after people they love. Mark Brendanowitz is never named. The theory says the reason is the one the show was too gentle to say out loud. Leslie's father left her a secret fortune. Leslie Knope earns a mid-level government salary in one of Indiana's most financially distressed municipalities. The Parks Department's budget is a recurring source of crisis throughout the series. Ben Wyatt arrives specifically because the town is on the edge of insolvency, and yet Leslie gives gifts of staggering expense and specificity. A museum-quality replica of the Iron Throne custom-built for Ben. Original commissioned artwork for every Galentine's Day recipient. Fully funded celebrations, trips, and events at a scale that makes no arithmetic sense against a civil servant's income. The show mentions Leslie's father only once, in a single line of dialogue. He died when she was 10. The theory says that line is the entire explanation for Leslie's financial mystery, and the show placed it in the dialogue deliberately, embedded in context that prevented the audience from connecting it to what they were watching every other episode. An inheritance from a father who died when she was a child, held in trust until adulthood, would explain every extravagant gift without requiring Leslie to have done anything ethically questionable to fund them. But the theory has an uncomfortable alternative version. Leslie's obsessive knowledge of Pawnee's budget, her intimate familiarity with every line item, every allocation, every gap between projected and actual spending, is either dedicated civic professionalism or the precision of someone who knows the system well enough to use it. The show never gave you a source for the money. The theory says that silence was intentional. The finale flash-forwards never happened. The most devastating theory in the entire Parks and Recreation universe is the one the show's own creator left deliberately unresolved. Every flash-forward in the finale occurs at the exact moment Leslie makes physical contact with someone she loves. Touch Leslie. See your best possible future. The show presents these glimpses as genuine confirmation, the audience's reward for 7 seasons of investment in these characters. But Schur confirmed in a 2020 interview that the physical triggering of the visions was intentional, and that the show deliberately left the question of their reality open. If the flash-forwards are Leslie's imagination rather than confirmed futures, then April's decision to become a mother, the most out-of-character development the finale delivers, is explained entirely. April never wanted children. She said it repeatedly, specifically, without ambiguity, across multiple seasons. Andy's sudden paternal enthusiasm reads as Andy, whose enthusiasm for everything is total and immediate. But April agreeing to 2 children contradicts every version of herself the show built across 7 years. The theory says those children exist in Leslie's mind. April's real future includes the career success, the vision shows, and none of the domestic outcome that felt wrong to everyone who noticed. The show ended not by confirming what happened to these people. It ended by showing you what Leslie Knope, the most devoted friend in television history, believed they all deserved. Whether it came true is the question Schur left for you to carry home.